What's your take on AI in FP&A?
I don't see AI replacing any of those FP&A people. There's a lot of contrast in the AI world, and the FP&A would need to know how we manage those contrasts. The great FP&A is a modernized FP&A.
What do you think are probably the one or two biggest failure points?
I think there are a couple of them. Probably the first one is, the second is the understanding of
What did you always look for?
the most important piece in that perspective as a business owner, as an executive, be thinking about FP&A as your front office of the organization. I really believe that every company needs a planning tool.
How do they know they're at the point where they should implement a planning tool?
Try to figure out where you have the most complicated problems.
Finance professionals are some of the hardest groups to sell to. What's your take on that?
I don't think it's the hardest team. It might be more sophisticated than
FP&A guy here. Have you ever wanted to level up your FP&A skills? Then check out the FP&A Guy's Ultimate Course Bundle at thefpnaguy.com. That's the FPANDA guy.com. And use code podcast to save 25%. Get started learning today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to FP&A Tomorrow, where we delve into the world of financial planning and analysis. Each week, we're joined by thought leaders, industry experts, and practitioners who share their insights and experiences, helping us navigate today's complexities and tomorrow's uncertainties. I am your host, Paul Barnhurst, aka the FP&A Guy, and I will be guiding you through the evolving landscape of FP&A. This week, I'm thrilled to welcome on our show the doctor, also known as Liran Edelist. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul, thank you. Happy to be here.
Probably most of you don't know, but Liran has a PhD, so I refer to him as the doctor. That's where that comes from, knowing that he's much smarter than I am. So a little bit about his background, and then we'll jump into our interview. He comes to us from the greater Boston area. He's originally from Israel. He's currently working for himself and has been for the last a year and a half or so now. Previous to that, he was the president of Jedox for the Americas. He has a PhD in business administration, and he's also served a couple different times as an adjunct professor, currently, I believe, Boston University, right?
Yes.
Yep. And so we're going to start with the same question we give every guest to start the show off. From your perspective, from where you're sitting, what does great FP&A look like? What is great FP&A?
So I think the great FP&A is a modernized FP&A where you don't have too much manual work and you have people that understand the business processes and do whatever they do to serve the best company they are in the most modern tools with the most open minds.
Can you give an example when you say like modern tools? What do you mean by that? Are you talking like they have a good planning tool? What does a modern kind of FP&A tool set look like?
I think it's a combination, right? A lot of people are talking today about how do you utilize AI. Definitely, we're talking about FP&A, EPM tools, and even utilization of standard office tools like communication, Teams, and spreadsheets. So it's a combination of everything. But the most important piece around that is to make sure that there are not too much of manual work and people are not spending their time on just crunching numbers when machines can do that for them. And that helps them, to create better insights and then better processes in their organizations.
So it sounds like a key part of any modern FP&A department that's going to look great is really making sure they're offloading the manual work to the machines.
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the modernization that we need in those organizations.
So why don't we have you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you ended up where you're at today?
Yeah, well, I started doing FP&A at kindergarten. I'm just kidding. It was about almost 30 years ago, but I wasn't at kindergarten at that time. But I was starting with a small consulting firm, and the consulting firm I was working for, they helped small businesses and, like good handyman that established a shop and later on a manufacturing plant. And he didn't really understand finance. So how do you make those people to become a strong business owner with strong finance capabilities as well? So that's why we're starting with a small consulting shop. And I love the ability to see with small businesses the 360 degrees of a business. But then I felt that I need more technology. So I switched to a technology company that provided both sort of EPM solutions. We used to call that Office of the CFO, and some business consulting. And after a couple of years, I decided that I need to come with my own methodologies to the market. So I established my own consulting firm, did performance management, balance scorecard, budget planning, forecasting, selected a couple of software vendors to work with. And then I merged my company with a BI company. I felt it's very accommodating to have business intelligence and planning those together. The company was doubling the size of consulting within about 2 years, and then we sold the company. And one of my software vendor, Jedox, asked me to relocate from Israel to Boston and help them establish the entity here in the US. So that's what I did for about 6 years. And over the past 2 years, I've been working with many other type of companies, both in the EPM space and with other very interesting scale-ups.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. You have a lot of different exciting things you do. I appreciate you sharing your background there. I'm curious, what's kept you interested in working in technology, particularly a lot of what you've done in technology obviously has been around the FP&A space. Why the finance space?
I was always seeing the finance as a starting point. I never thought about, okay, here is a solution, here is something that works better or nicer than Excel, and that's it. I was always thinking about FP&A as like a secondary to the CEO of the company and help navigating between different processes and inefficiencies in the organization. So finance was a starting point because there's some regulation. Okay, you need to have budget, you need to have your finance reports in place. But then, okay, if you really want to understand, if you really want to make impact, you need to understand what's behind numbers. Now, technology is helping us to understand what's behind number much better today. And, over my 2 or 3 decades of career, you can see the technology getting better and helps you to do much more effective and efficient processes in a shorter time frame, get a better insight. So I'm still in the technology because I still believe that there is a lot to do with it.
Love that. There's definitely still a lot to do with technology. I would agree with that. And I'm curious, how do we as FP&A professionals find the right balance? You hear people, process, and technology. Obviously, technology is expensive. If it's not done right, it can be a big distraction. What advice do you have about finding that right balance between, your people, your processes, and your technology? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the starting point is people, right? We're human. We want to control the machine and not the other way. So the starting point is people, and we need to make sure that people understand what technology can do for them. And we want to understand and making sure that people can be good business partners to any persons in the organization. Okay, so people are always the starting point, and we need to make sure we invest in people in the right time. That's actually one of the reasons why we established together Plan Buddies, right? We wanted to invest in people. The second piece of technology is literally, okay, what tools do you use? Now, I'm a little bit of a handyman, and I always make sure that I have the right tools. What I learned in my home is that, if you really want to make a quick, easy job to fix, you need to have the right tools. Same as, the professional life. So we need to make sure that those people have the right technology that serves them. We don't need to overshoot, we don't need to undershoot, but we need to think about short and long term with technology. And then the processes, right? This is what is literally merging between people and technology. You don't want to implement technology without understanding processes. You don't want people that do not understand the processes in the organization. So that's literally the way the glue between the people and the technology.
Makes a lot of sense. So, I like you said, it's people always first. You have to understand your processes, and processes married with the right people and technology enables you to do more.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you balance when it comes to technology? You see these huge price tags sometimes. You go, is that really worth it? How do you balance that as a department of thinking, do I really need this? Would I be better investing in people? Any advice from what you've seen being a consultant? And I'm sure you've had, many of these conversations of like, hey, that's out of our budget. How should companies manage that? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, I think in our era, there are so many technologies around, then I would definitely say that the number one goal is to make sure that the price tag is relevant for the business benefits. And if it's not, then I would advise the customer or client to find a different technology with the right price tag. I have been working with hundreds of customers and companies, and I do still see, like, a customer reach out to me a couple of weeks ago and mentioned that for a 10 user system, they have a vendor that was charging like $100,000 for licenses and another $200,000 for implementation. There is no business benefit around that without naming any specific vendor or company. So I would definitely say that's the cases where you need to make sure that the investment is making sense. Now, the other piece of that is that regardless the price tag, assuming that it's relevant for the organization, you need to have the right team to implement the technology, right? You can't be 100% lean on consultants that will do the work that your internal people and department needs to do. So it's all about balancing, and with the variety of options today, just finding the right one with the right price tag.
And I'm curious, when you mentioned, the business has to do something, do you find a lot of times when tools fail, do you see it the company didn't do a good job of defining the requirements and really working with consultants and being involved? Or do you think it's typically the implementation consultants? Or what do you typically see? Because it seems like, you hear a lot about these failures. And what do you think are probably the one or two biggest kind of failure points, so to speak, in that process?
So I think there are a couple of them. Probably the first one is that when we are implementing an EPM solution, we need to think about the system and not about Excel. And sometimes it's difficult. So in many cases, people were thinking about their Excel spreadsheets. They try to make those Excel spreadsheets to become a system, and it's barely possible. And that kind of mindset of, okay, I just need my spreadsheet in the system is one reason sometimes for failure. The second piece is the understanding of the business processes and how a system should be evolving. In many cases, you start a small model and then you keep patch it and not really thinking about that. And at some point, you're ending up with a monster that no one knows how to maintain because someone 5 years ago made kind of strange decisions in an unrevealed code. So I think that probably the most technical problems that system was not designed right or designed to be an Excel spreadsheet. And by nature, there are many cases where companies just didn't choose the right technology. Sometimes it's because of their lack of requirements or incorrect requirements, and sometimes just because maybe they choose a technology with a nice logo but not necessarily something with a great fit to their needs.
Thank you. That all makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate what you said there, and particularly the part when you said they just bring their spreadsheet and I just want you to recreate this in your tool. I want to do exactly what I did in Excel, but I need the benefit of your tool. It reminds me, almost about 15 years ago now, I worked on a project where we were implementing MicroStrategy, and we took all our Excel files and basically just built them in MicroStrategy, and nobody used them. Nobody liked them. Like, if you're just going to give me my Excel files, just give them to me in Excel because they're easier to use. And it was a learning lesson that you got to change for the form factor. That things need to be different often, and there will be benefits to that. And in the long run, they made huge progress on the reporting, and it took a lot longer than planned. But that was a real eye opener when we did kind of POC and rolled out those first reports. And I left the department, but I still remember that conversation with the person who was leading the project of, yeah, we realized we couldn't just, it didn't make sense to duplicate what we had in Excel because it works differently. There are benefits of doing it differently. And that increases the likelihood of people using the reports. So I think that's a similar, obviously BI, but I think there's a lot of similarities between that and what we often see in FP&A. So I'm going to ask you a question about selling. Is it true what they say? I always hear, finance professionals are some of the hardest groups to sell to. What's your take on that?
I don't think it's the hardest team, no, but there are might be more sophisticated than others and might be more busy than other type of roles in organization. So I think it's a combination of, being a sophisticated user with a bunch of needs, as well as being very busy and not always having the right time to deep dive into each and every solution. So I think those are the difficulties. But on the other side, I think once FP&A teams adopt the solution and like it, it will be your best customer because they will keep using it and expand the usage. So I think even if it's a little bit hard to sell, it's great to keep the success running and moving.
There can be a great partnership there and a lot of expansion when done right.
Absolutely, yes.
We'll see. So I would love to get your thoughts. I know you've consulted with a lot of different CPM tools. You've seen a lot of things in the market, especially since leaving Jedox. And just curious, any technology that has you really excited or tools, anything you've seen? You don't have to mention company names if you don't want to. You can if you want, totally up to you. But anything you've seen that has you excited at this point or that you look at and think, oh, this could be a really cool use case?
Yes, absolutely. Let's start maybe with something that I'm less excited of, and I will not name any company here, but I think that what is exciting me is newer technologies. And when you just see a new product with an old technology, I'm not getting excited. And again, I don't want to give any names, but I was working with cubes almost 30 years ago. It was like with historical TN1. And sometimes you see like new tools in the market that are still coming with the same innovative in-memory technology that is with us for a couple of decades already. So the area that is exciting me more from a technology perspective is literally how you get the FP&A data more involved with the organizational data and be more homogeneous together. Like, how do we being in a situation that FP&A is not creating a silo where we keep saying we don't want a silo organization, but sometimes we build an FP&A technology that remains a silo by itself. So I'm getting more excited with tools that are more natively integrated with already data warehouses and more kind of foundational data in organizations. One of the companies I've seen doing that is Lumel. They have a bunch of tools that are doing great planning systems that are literally allowing you both to manage your BI needs and the planning together in one place.
Yeah. And speaking of Lumel, and I know there's several others, they take an approach of building a tool that allows you to do planning on top of your BI application, right? I think Power BI in this case is primarily what they work with. Do you see that? How do you see that going forward? So not Lumel, but just in general, that idea, I think there's a lot of room for growth there. Not saying it's the only way, of course, but it's an area where there could be growth. But what's your thoughts of adding a planning solution on top of Power BI, that data warehouse? Because you specifically mentioned the challenge of not creating silos in data. So do you see that as an area that we can expect to see grow in the future? Or how do you think about that?
I would almost say that with current technologies and power of BI system, whether you take a Microsoft or Snowflake or any of the other vendors in the field, getting the power of BI isolated from the needs of FP&A is a bit of a problem from a long-term perspective. So if you're still spending a lot of the resources of building FP&A solution by taking and extracting data either directly from different sources or from a data warehouse to a silo, it's a problem. And I definitely see an opportunity, potentially even to current vendor, which will be very difficult for them, I believe, but definitely for new vendor to say, hey, we don't want to isolate the data that is in our BI system with the data that we're using for planning. And moreover, we don't want to build the interfaces and the maintenance for that. And we definitely don't want to reinvent the integration capacity if you already have standard tools that are doing that.
FP&A guy here. Today, I want to talk about the FP&A Guy's Ultimate FP&A Course Bundle. This bundle includes over 10 hours of content recorded by Ron Montero and myself, many templates, and great lessons to make you a better FP&A professional. The content includes FP&A business partnering, how to manage tough conversations, build world-class relationships, and hold the business accountable. Includes modern Excel, which is a real game changer for the way you'll work in Excel. Excel tables, the gateway to modern Excel. Power Query, a game changer for transforming your manual processes and loading data. And then dynamic arrays. Next, we cover modeling design principles. In this course, we talk about the importance of designing models in a certain way and how important it is that you think about design. And last but not least, driving value through smart analysis. How you can conduct data analysis to be a better FP&A professional. Go ahead and sign up for this bundle at thefpnaguy.com. That's the FPNANDA guy.com. Use the code podcast to save 25%. Get started learning today. Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying, right? If you're doing it all in one tool, recreating it all could be a lot of work. And so there definitely are benefits. The more, and that's why you see more and more tools saying, hey, look, we hook right into your data warehouse, not just BI, but general tools. I can name a lot. Or yes, we'll work with Snowflake. Or some have taken the approach of, we'll make sure our data is really easy to export out into Power BI or Tableau. They're all finding different ways to try to solve that, because you're right. The last thing you want is a silo of your data. You don't want finance to be on an island with its data or with the business's data, because finance needs sales data, HR data, operational data, ERP and accounting data. Especially FP&A, it's not like they're just dealing with finance numbers. It's usually company-wide data, and it's not efficient to store it in two places. And that's why I think we're seeing as much of a convergence as we are between kind of analytics and FP&A in various different forms and factors.
Absolutely. And maybe another factor to add there is that sort of a recreation of the spreadsheet. I think that many vendors are trying to say, hey, we have a similar experience like Excel or like a spreadsheet. I would expect vendor to think differently and to say, no, we want to create something that is better, right? This is part of the innovation. It's not just about the technology. It's not only about the data integration. It's also about, okay, how a modern user interfaces look like. Is it really needs to be a spreadsheet, or there could be something that are working better than our beloved spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's a great question. It'll be interesting to watch. I mean, the spreadsheet is a fabulous form factor for prototyping, wireframing, many things. One of the biggest weaknesses, and I don't think this is something that many FP&A tools are much better at, is the multidimensional aspect of modeling, right? Spreadsheet, you have rows, columns, and you have sheets. You can get 3 or 4 dimensions. I mean, you could technically get more if you get really complex with your formulas, but in multidimensional modeling, you can sometimes get, 8, 9, 10 levels deep without having to change your formula. It's just a matter of stacking everything in, and it spreads it out, and you adjust accordingly. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits. And for me, I love the spreadsheet interface, but I also love seeing other things people have done, like visual interfaces and things on top of that. Because I agree with you, we don't want to continue to just do the exact same thing with technology. I had somebody say one time, will Excel ever die? And we asked him yes or no, and his response was, it should. And what he meant by that, and he was an avid user, he's changed thousands of people in Excel. He goes, in 20 years, if Excel looks the same, if it's not a completely different tool, we failed. Because how fast technology is advancing, it should be much better than what we have today. So it wasn't so much Excel die or not. It was like the current form should not be what we're using in 20 years. Look at a calculator or a phone or, a computer. Almost none of them look like what they did when they first started.
Yep.
And so I get what you're saying. I think that's a really good point. And so I wanted to ask you, we've talked quite about technology. What's your take on AI in FP&A? I know you've done work with AI, and particularly generative AI. So what's your thoughts there? What are you seeing as the use cases today?
I think it's an amazing opportunity. That would be maybe the highlight. More and more people will need to learn this technology and to know how and where to implement that, right? There is no question about that, and I'm probably not the first that is saying that. I don't see AI replacing any of those FP&A people. I think there is a lot of stuff that the FP&A people will need to do from a process perspective, from understanding. But I believe that it makes it literally, the AI adds like additional pair of hands, if not more than that, to every FP&A professional. I did with Plan Buddies a nice workshop for AI, and I showed a couple of examples that AI can help us to, it actually teaches us some new ideas that we never heard about. But we also so that AI is actually having all the malfunctions that finance needs to fix. It's not really auditable. You don't really know who is responsible for the data, right? So there are a lot of problems with AI that we need to tackle yet. So I think there is a lot of contrast in the AI world, and the FP&A will need to know how they manage those contrasts, but definitely use it as another pair of hands, if not another two pairs of hands for the work.
Sounds like it's definitely something we should be using. There's opportunities, but we still have things to solve.
Absolutely, yes. But on the other hand, maybe not on the other hand, AI should start now, and the ability to adopt AI should start, rather sooner than later for each and every organization.
100% agree. Every company, every person should be playing with it, figuring it out, using it, figuring the use cases, some more than others, depending on company and what opportunity and access they have. So it's going to vary, but there are I think everybody can get benefit out of it today. I know I've got a ton of benefit out of it. I use it all the time, right? And so I know there's opportunity, and that's what everybody needs to find. If you're just burying your head in the sand, you're missing out, which I'm sure there are some people doing that, but there were also some people who did that with the calculator and the computer and the internet. They're all just fads, right?
Yes.
I want to ask a question. You've been a business owner, running your own consulting firm. You've been a president of a company. What do you expect from your finance and FP&A team? What did you always look for?
To me, the FP&A team should be the front office of the organization. We have the concept of front office and back office on investment firms. To me, it's a very similar concept. Like, this is like the deal desk of the organization. FP&A need to think in terms of how do we lead the business? How do we sit not next, but with the CEO and look at data, look at opportunities, examine risks and mitigations, and check the processes and the data that we're having. So I think the most important piece in that perspective, as a business owner, as an executive, you're thinking about FP&A as your front office of the organization.
And what's maybe your favorite memory or favorite thing FP&A's done over the years? You're like, wow, that really impressed me. Something that kind of left you going, I wish all my FP&A people would do that level of work.
Well, honestly, that was many years ago, and I have FP&A team that on top of their, let's say, standard financial roles, they also dealt with the real performance, not the real, but classic performance management of organization, like balanced scorecards and other. And they were 100% focused on a pillar that many companies are kind of not really observing in the balanced scorecard, and that was the learning and growth. And they actually asked to see how we can implement as part of our budget and forecast processes in the organization, those KPIs of learning and growth within the organization. And I think this was super innovative. That was about a decade ago. And I believe that even today, there are not too many FP&A professionals that are really thinking outside of the box, not just let's look at our current processes, at the current data, but let's motivate people in the organization to grow and support the organization, not with the day-to-day, but with the tomorrow.
I love that they were involved in learning and growth and thinking about tomorrow, because you're right. That's often an afterthought, not a focus. And so I appreciate you sharing that one. I love that one. I think it's an area we could all do better to think about that within the budgeting. And often it turns into an area of, hey, learning and growth, where can we cut the budget? Not how do we ensure that we have a culture that creates an environment of learning and growth. I mean, I've been guilty of it. Every finance person has, where they go in and, good place to cut the budget. So I really like that, because it shows you're thinking holistically and about the company as a whole. Next, I want to ask you about the community you've created. So you started a community called Plan Buddies. Can you tell our audience, why did you start that? How did that come about? And you're smiling, and I probably know why, because this involves me, but we'll ask you anyway.
Yes, of course. It's a mutual question, right? We need to ask ourselves that
Yes,
question.
but you are the one who started it, not me. You came to me. So you can tell the backstory.
Okay, so honestly, the backstory is coming back to people, right? On a day-by-day basis, I'm usually speaking with dozens of people. And what came to me is that people are looking their challenges sometimes as their own problem in their very specific organizations. And sometimes, those people are not really aware of the mutual challenges that we have in the FP&A world. And challenges are not necessarily just how do I crunch data, or how do I cut cost, or what template should I be using, or what tool. It's literally just sharing business practices, processes. How do I get the new hires in a better ways, and so many other stuff. So Plan Buddies was established first to understand that there are other people with planning challenges that want to learn from each other. And it was focusing really on the human factor, no big brand names, no big company names, not necessarily being sponsored by technology vendors, but literally being able to create a shared knowledge between people, and also maybe some friendly relationship with, which never hurt.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit on that. And what's been your favorite experience with Plan Buddies so far? How's it been?
Wow. I actually, there are many of it. It's more than just one favorite. I loved what we did at the opening event when we had the 4 days with great speakers and hundreds of people joining in and writing comments and jumping from one topic to the other, which is like a typical FP&A day. Everything all over the place, right? You need to think about your business partners and HR and methodologies and finance and operations. So I think the opening day was one of the greatest experience. And I think the other piece is literally the one-on-one conversation with people I never heard from, companies I never heard the names, all around the globe, right? Not only here in the US. It was amazing to have those one-on-one conversation, the small groups that we have sometimes. That was amazing to share the knowledge, to have some fun. The combination of your jokes with some professional materials was all great.
Looking to level up your career and build skills that make you stand out to FP&A hiring managers? How about earning a certificate from a world-renowned business school? Wharton Online and Wall Street Prep have partnered to create an 8-week online financial planning and analysis certificate program. You'll learn the art of forecasting, analysis, business partnering, and financial storytelling from Wharton Online's world-class faculty, coupled with first-hand exposure to technical and interpersonal skills with real-world applications as practiced in top corporations. Space is limited, so level up your career today and use the discount code TheFPAGuy300 to receive $300 off tuition. That is the FPA Guy 300 to receive $300 off tuition. Learn more by going to wallstreetprep.wharton.upenn.edu. Yeah, and what Liran's talking about there is we had our opening last January for Plan Buddies, and we brought in 10 different speakers. We had about 10 different sessions throughout the entire day, back to back, with little breaks in between. And we had hundreds of people come in and out, and there were a number of people who joined the community. It was just a fabulous day of learning from experts. And I hosted a lot of it, told a lot of jokes. So anyone who knows who's attended any of my webinars has had to deal with my painful Excel jokes. But so that's a little bit of that. And if anyone's interested in learning more about Plan Buddies, you can always check us out at plan-buddies.com. We're out there and would love to have you join us. But moving on here, I want to ask you one more question until we move to kind of the last set, what I call our standard questions that we have for our guests. So I'm sure we have someone out there who's listening to this episode and they're thinking, I probably should implement a planning tool, but I really don't want to deal with it. Or am I ready? So what advice can you offer them? Two parts to this. First, how do they know they're at the point where they should implement a planning tool? And then any advice around going through the process to make sure they have the best chance of success?
So I think the first question is very simple. I really believe that every company needs a planning tool, whether that's a small enterprise, above, of course, a couple of $1 million. If that's an enterprise, a couple of $1 billion, you need the planning tools. It doesn't make sense. You have accounting system, you have CRM system, you have all those systems in place, and you don't have a tool for your front office of the organization. That's a problem, right? So I think FP&A tool is something that every organization, once they have CRM, accounting system, and similar supportive system, they need FP&A tool. That's checked. Now,
Excel or Google Sheets is sufficient once you get past a few million.
No, I definitely don't think so. I think those are productivity tools. They meant to serve individual person. They do have some collaborative features, but those are not systems. They will never be able to become systems. So I don't think it's right to take something and twist it into something it is not, right? It's almost like, I don't know, putting a ground coffee in a tea bag, right? You can do that. Is that the right way of doing it? Probably not, right?
Not being a coffee or tea drinker, I'll take your word for it.
Okay. I have my coffee here. So now for the second question, my methodology of implementation is very straightforward. And I have a couple of rule of thumbs for that. The first one is that always take your most difficult and most challenging problem and the easiest problem to resolve, right? A lot of companies are saying, oh, I have like a low hanging fruit. They will start with that, but they forget about all the complexity and they're ending up with the incorrect tool or the incorrect team or something like that. So try to figure out where you have the most complicated problem. I don't know, could be costing, could be inventory management, contract management, whatever it is, and could be something more simple like, okay, I just need to consolidate numbers. So take those two problems when you evaluate tools. And the next stage is literally starting with baby steps. I am not a great believer of, okay, now let's do a $10 million project, hire a bunch of people and tons of consultants, and just go with that. I think organizations that are not starting with small and growing with their tool, with their solution, with the understanding of how technology solves business problem, I think they're spending usually a lot of money and they're getting into the risk that the system is not really resolving all the problems because it becomes another system, and still people are then exporting the data from that system to Excel to increase the productivity. So it's all about baby steps, taking one model after the other, making sure people in the organization understand the technology and the benefits, and make sure you can start with the tool as soon as possible and not after a year. If you have to implement a tool for 6 to 12 months, it becomes irrelevant once you launch it.
A lot of truth that if you take too long, by the time you get done, your business model's changed and you have a lot of problems with many tools. All right. So this section is our kind of FP&A rapid fire section, so to speak, where we have a couple different questions we ask, looking for kind of quick, short answers in general here. So the first one is, what is the number one technical skill that FP&A professionals should master?
Understanding data.
I like it. Understanding data. What is the number one soft skill?
And understanding business processes.
So we got data and business processes. And then how are you using generative AI yourself today?
I use it too often, I guess. No, I'm using it almost everywhere. I'm using it when I need to write emails, blog posts, articles, because I'm not a native speaker, and that's a great help. It makes my processes much faster. And I also use it sometimes when I just want to check data correlation and a few other stuff. I'm always double and triple check that. So I never use AI without at least double check it. And again, it's not just one check, at least double, if not triple check the AI results.
I like that. It's a good reminder that, look, check it a couple times. Yep. Don't just blindly trust it. I saw sometime someone put out a post and it said, if you need any changes to this post, let us know. We can rewrite it for you. And that was at the bottom of their post. You're like, I wonder who wrote that post. They were in a hurry and left in the AI part at the end of, do you need any corrections?
Yes.
Yeah, always good to check. We've all probably done something like that before. I know I have. All right, next one here. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about FP&A, what are you changing?
Modernization mindset. Stick to the future, not to the past.
So elaborate a little bit on that, because you didn't say just modernization, you said modernization mindset. What is a modernization mindset?
So, for years, I was pitching a lot about transformation and how is it important for finance to make a transformation into the digital era, AI tools, and so on. Now, transformation in many ways failed because it became huge. A lot of people are afraid of that, and it became like long enterprise project, never ends, and when it ends, it's no longer relevant, right?
Yep.
So modernization mindset means that, okay, let's do the low-hanging fruit, but keep doing them over time, and not just think about modernization as, a one project that is done. So the modernization mindset, let's keep looking what's going on out there. Let's look at our organization. Let's see what resources we can bring together. what technology we can use, and keep evaluating that over time and implement that in small pieces, right? Not necessarily everything in one day. And that keeps your FP&A to be current, to be updated, to think, in a modern mindset, and not just about, okay, how do I reconcile the numbers from whatever last year.
I really love how you talked about it as a journey, the modernization mindset. I've said before, transformation is about more of an evolution. It's not an event, which is kind of like modernization. If you're just like, hey, once we get this system in, we're in good place, that's the wrong mindset. So I really like how you explained that. I'm gonna steal that, just so you know. I will quote you, but I'll steal. That's how I get all my content. Oh wait, I shouldn't admit that. All right. This next section is where we get to know you personally a little bit. What's your favorite hobby or passion? What are you doing when you're not working?
I'm doing a lot. I like to do stuff. No, seriously. So I think my second passion is really teaching. That's why I'm with BU now. I have passion to make food, especially when my kids like it and they like almost everything I make, not just the cakes. And I like to be outdoors and do hikings and some skiing over winter time. So being active and see the world out there.
You got to come to Park City and do some skiing. I've been waiting for that. I'm
Yes,
going to put it out there
this
to the
week.
world. Everybody ping Liran and tell him to come visit me in Utah. All right. Next, if you could recommend one book to our audience to read, what book are you going to recommend?
That's a difficult one. I'm looking right now on my professional side of book, but I'm also thinking about the science fiction and the mystery book that I'm reading. I have over there my corporate finance, like big one. Let me not choose one, but I would say to people read, whether that's to inspire your imagination and enjoy a good old book if you like romance, or if you like more actions. I like action and spy stories and that kind of stuff. Or if you read really to learn from professional, I would just say read. I always read and I keep reading a lot. So I don't want to just point on one and mistreat all the others.
All right. Well, we'll let you get away with that. I tried, but that's fine. No, I love the just read because I'm not a big like business book reader. I mostly read for pleasure. I work so much and do other things. I want to kind of let the imagination go, and that's often why I read a lot. So I get it. We're all different. If you can go anywhere in the world tomorrow, where you're going, what's your favorite travel destination?
When I used to live in Israel, my favorite travel destination was here in the US, so I'm now here. And I would say that my favorite travel destination would be always back to my homeland in Israel.
I thought you were going to say that. I figured that's probably where you go. Makes a lot of sense. And I know you have family coming to visit, so enjoy that. It'll be exciting for you. If you could have dinner with one person alive in the world today, you can take anyone to dinner. Who are you taking to dinner?
I think it would be maybe Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft.
Why him?
There are many reasons. Just for disclosure, I did a very large project with Microsoft, and it was last 4 years since he was just joined Microsoft until most recently. And I've seen how the organization was shifting and changing, not just from the other side, seeing like almost like one of those kinds of old vendors becoming like the most modern company with AI, productivity, and cloud solutions. But you've seen the culture in the organization evolving and a lot of other stuff. And I think it would be a fascinating dinner to have and understand about, the mindset of people that makes, such a great work with huge organizations.
Yeah, he'd be a great one to have. There's a lot of them that have just done amazing work that would be fun to have dinner with. And I think he would be a cool person to have. All right, so wrap up questions here. We're just coming to the end of our time. If you could offer our audience advice to be a better FP&A business partner, so particularly on the business partnering side, what advice would you give them?
In one word, it would be storytelling. So I think you need to be a good storytelling when you come with requirements or when you come with recommendations. You need to think about the story. You need to make sure you know how to convince people with the ideas and explain it very good. You need to make sure that the data looks in a way that is resonates for people, and you need to come with all the background stories to lead people forward with ads. So being a good storytellers will make you a better business partner and much more successful in your journey.
If we had more time, I'd have you pull out your Kermie the Frog and tell us a story so people could see what it's like. But we'll hold that toward a future episode.
Yes.
Anyone who knows, Liran here likes frogs, so we figured that could be a fun storytelling for a future episode.
But there is a reason behind that, right? It's because they always jump forward.
They do. So modernization, always be like a frog. Jump forward, don't get boiled. If you're jumping forward, it's harder to get boiled. See? So we got it covered.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. If someone wants to get a hold of you or learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. Check my names. It's a very unique name, Liran Edelist, and I'm very responsive. I'm usually very responsive. So
yeah, there's not many Liran Edelists out there, not especially with a PhD that's a doctor. So thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed chatting with you today, Liran, and excited for audience to get to know a little bit about you and all the great work you're doing out there in the tech space. So thanks again.
Thank you. It was my all pleasure. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to FP&A Tomorrow. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review on your podcast platform of choice. This allows us to continue to bring you great guests from around the globe. As a reminder, you can earn CPE credit by going to earmarkcpe.com, downloading the app, taking a short quiz, and getting your CPE certificate. To earn continuing education credits for the FPAC certification, take the quiz on Earmark and contact me, the show host, for further details.